Before we begin, I want to invite you into a moment of awareness. You don't need to close your eyes or stop what you're doing. Just bring your attention to your breath. Take a deep inhale in through your nose as fully as you can. And as you exhale, imagine releasing just a little bit of the weight you've been carrying. One more deep breath in. This time, inhale the truth that you are still whole, even in times of change. And as you exhale, let go of the idea that you have to hold everything alone. Last one. Breathe in the wisdom that leadership is not just about action, it is about presence. And as you exhale, settle into this conversation knowing that there is space for all that you carry today. Let's begin. Welcome to Everyday Grief, a space where we tell the truth about loss, the kind of grief that isn't always named, but is deeply felt. I'm Dr. Anitra, a minister, certified coach, 25-year HR veteran, and seminarian. And I created this space because I know that grief doesn't just happen in death. It happens in leadership, in the workplace, in the moments where we have to make decisions that sit heavy on our souls. And today, we're talking about one of the heaviest, the grief that comes with layoffs. Because if you've ever had to let someone go, you know that this isn't just a strategic decision, it's a human one. Maybe you personally hired these employees. Maybe you've seen them grow, watched them pour their gifts into your company. Maybe you've been at their bedside when they were in the hospital, celebrated graduations and birthdays with their children, held their hand through the loss of a loved one. And now you have to tell them that their position no longer exists. Maybe you understand the business need for this decision, but you don't like the way the world talks about layoffs, cold and transactional and dehumanizing. The "you're fired" culture, the way people become nothing more than numbers on a spreadsheet. And if that doesn't sit right with you, you're not wrong. Because leadership isn't just about efficiency, it's about integrity. It's about how you show up in hard moments, how you hold grief without losing yourself in it, and how you lead forward with clarity and compassion. That's why I wanted to invite you into a different conversation today, because how you handle this moment will shape not only the people who are leaving your company, but the leader you become on the other side of it. I've spent my career walking alongside leaders who have had to make painful choices. I've sat with executives who carry the weight of layoffs years later. I've coached leaders, I've coached professionals who wonder, how do I make this moment meaningful and not just a transaction? And what I know is this: there is a way to do this differently. We just don't talk about it enough. I want to help you answer that question. How do I make this moment that you have to lay someone off something that's meaningful and not just a simple layoff, not just a transaction? I want to support you in finding a way for you to honor the people that you are letting go. And just as importantly, the part of you that still wants to lead with integrity. Not everyone wants to be a part of the "you're fired" culture. And I want to support you being able to come up with a different script, a different way of talking with yourself, a different way of letting someone go that you hold with the greatest respect, and to do it well. So if you're feeling the weight of what we're talking about, if you're feeling the weight of a conversation you have to have or that you've already had, if you're carrying these emotions that come along with layoffs and you don't know what to do with it, this conversation is for you. So you heard me say earlier that I'm a seminarian. That means that I am in seminary. I'm actually completing my final year in seminary right now. And I hold the stories of the Bible dear because it gives me, and I hope it gives you, a lens by which you can be able to get a sense of what God might be pointing out for you, inviting you to consider as you engage in the work that you're doing. And I want to lift up the story today of Gideon. And I believe in the story of Gideon, we can find some lessons around this hidden grief that comes along with layoffs. So the story of Gideon, we find him in a place of leading a battle. But he wasn't just leading a battle. In this story, he's also leading a reduction. You'll remember that Gideon starts off with 32,000 troops, but God told him, "You have too many men." And through a refining process, Gideon was left with 300 soldiers. I want you to just sit with that for a moment. He wasn't just losing numbers. He was losing people he had trained. He was losing people that he trusted. He watched them leave, knowing that they had prepared for a battle they wouldn't get to fight. He had to send them home, not because they weren't valuable, but because the next phase required something different. Does that sound familiar to you? Layoffs will feel a lot like that. You aren't letting people go because they weren't skilled. You aren't reducing your team because they didn't contribute. You are making a shift because something larger, something strategic, something unavoidable is requiring it. And that is a heavy weight to carry. Let's pull up a little bit more closely to this story. Let's do a close reading of this story of Gideon's navigation of this leadership grief. And there are a few dimensions I want to lift up for your consideration. One is around guilt and moral injury. Sometimes we will have to consider the question of, did I just let good people go? Like Gideon, you may feel the weight of sending people home, even if the decision wasn't yours alone. You may have some fear around what remains. Do I have enough left to succeed? Gideon must have looked at his 300 men and thought, is this enough? You may also be wondering, can my remaining team still thrive after these layoffs? Then there's the shift that you see from loss to trust. What if I trust in what remains instead of mourning what was lost? What if you could focus your eyes on the people who are remaining? Gideon had to focus not on the army he lost, but on the team he still had. But leaders, and I trust that this is where you are too, you are trying to balance things out. How do you pour into those who remain while honoring those who left? Sometimes it will appear that your last conversation with people that you've been working with for years needs to occur on the other side of that Zoom, on the other side of the table, on the other side of that person closing the door for the last time, gathering their boxes and walking away. How do you engage this balance between the people that you have remaining and those who have left? Surely there is space within you to grieve those who you've built these long relationships with, while also trying to continue to restore the confidence, the trust, and the direction that you have to be able to give to those who remain. But before we go deeper into how to move from moral injury, which is what we've been talking about, to a place of moral clarity, I want to offer you something that can help you truly understand the way that you process grief. Because the truth is, grief isn't one size fits all. The way that you navigate loss, whether it's workplace transitions, personal change, or leadership fatigue, is deeply personal. And that's why I created the Grief Resilience Assessment. Leadership is full of change, let me tell you. But some changes leave a mark. Layoffs, restructuring, role shifts, even personal losses that spill into work. As we shared earlier, grief doesn't just happen in death. It happens in the spaces where things used to be. And if you don't understand your grief, it can shape your leadership in ways that you don't even realize, because it will show up. So the Grief Resilience Assessment is designed for leaders like you, leaders who want to build a strategy for managing change while staying deeply human. It reveals your grief archetype so that you can understand how you process loss and develop resilience that's authentic for you. I want to invite you to take the assessment today by just visiting everydaygriefcoach.com/assessments. That's everydaygriefcoach.com/assessments. Because grief is inevitable, but resilience, that's something you can cultivate. Now let's get back into today's conversation on leading through loss with integrity. One of the hardest parts of leadership is knowing that the right decision can still feel wrong, and that's moral injury. Moral injury happens when you are faced or when you are forced to act in a way that conflicts with your values. You might not have made the decision alone, but you have to carry it out. This could have been something that you were invited to do as a larger reduction in force at your organization. So I want to invite you to consider, how do you move from moral injury to moral clarity? One of the first steps that I believe you must do is to, one, acknowledge what you are holding. I want you to ask yourself, what part of this decision is weighing on me the most? What part of this decision is weighing on me the most? There's so much that's involved with every single part of our decision and the work that we have to make around how do we tell the people that we are getting ready to lay off that they are laid off. You may have a script, but you know the script seems rather cold. It's written in a way that reduces the amount of risk the organization would carry. But there is a way for you to be deeply human, to listen thoughtfully to those that are being laid off, to give them the space to lament, to grieve. That is what it means to really do this work with even greater humanity. Another way to get to moral clarity from the place of moral injury is to, one, consider how you might release the guilt that isn't yours. I want you to consider this question and meditate on a potential range of answers. What part of this is mine to carry? One of the most important things you will need to do in life when it's time to assess ourselves emotionally is to unpack every single thing and see where our role is so that we're building up our self-awareness. But then it's also important to know, what is the part that is not yours to carry? Was this a larger organizational decision? What is yours to carry? What is not? So what part of this, in your reflection, what part of this is mine to carry and what part is not? And step 3, I want to invite you to reaffirm who you are as a leader. Ask yourself, how do I want to lead through this next season? How do I want to lead through this next season? You will have had an opportunity to navigate through this really, really difficult time, where you're listening to the laments of those who may have been laid off, and then those who are remaining. And the way that you're managing the details, the delivery, the compassion of the layoff for those who are leaving, and the way that you listen to, respect, and honor the grief of your team as they grieve not only the loss of their colleagues, they're grieving the role that they had with them, they are grieving the the potential that their work world is going to change. Perhaps they now have to adapt to a different kind of workload, a renegotiation of what matters and how they are productive in their day-to-day routines. And in many ways, how they continue to do the work that is theirs to do, but do so in a way that they have to also function with the reality that the people that they normally depended on are no longer there. The systems, the culture that was created is no longer there. And so you as a leader have to attend to all of that while also being visionary about the workplace, the culture, the workload, the meaning that all of this will hold for your leadership and for the way that your team will look to your leadership going forward. The way that you hold, the way that you manage, the way that you work through, the way that you are present in this point in your leadership journey through a layoff will become the brand that you carry throughout the rest of your career. Undoubtedly, you will learn from this very profound experience of workplace loss. And you, through bringing your whole authentic self, have the opportunity to shape how your team will heal, to shape the way that your brand as a leader, the brand of the company that you work with, will walk out of the door with those who are leaving. So this is an incredible moment for your leadership and for your company. And my invitation is that you begin this major work of shifting the way that layoff conversations are had. In so many cases, there could be careers that have lasted multiple decades that are coming to a close in a conversation of less than 10 minutes because you may have multiple layoffs to do in one day. How might you bring compassion, thoughtful planning into the way that you are hosting that conversation with that long-term employee in a way that is integrous to who you are, to your heart, and to the overall company, and to the team that you are continuing to create. How do I want to lead through this next season? Now, before we close today, I want us to take a moment to honor what we've uncovered. No matter where you are, driving, walking, or sitting, I want you to take a deep breath with me. Inhale now deeply. We've covered so much today. And I want you to fill your lungs, give your lungs the generosity of your beautiful breath. And as you exhale, release anything you don't need to carry forward from this moment. If you feel some of the emotions, some of the feeling of tears welling up, the feeling of needing to just let go, maybe you feel tension in your shoulders, just be attentive to that. because this work of layoffs is deeply emotional and intense. And feeling it, it's quite okay. Despite what popular culture believes, it's quite okay to feel that. So feel that. And now let's take another deep breath in together. Breathe in once more. And this time, inhale the knowledge that your leadership is still whole, even in loss. And as you exhale, let go of any shame or guilt that was never yours to carry. One last breath. Breathe in the clarity that you can lead with both strategy and soul. And as you exhale, step forward knowing that grief is not the absence of leadership. Grief is proof of your humanity. And I want you to take that breath with you into the rest of your day. Know that grief is a marker of your compassion. Breathe and let the grief be okay. Allow the breath, the clarity, the breath that is now running through your lungs, your softened gaze, your softened shoulders, and your new capacity to be go with you now. Grace and peace.